Hey guys, welcome back. I am Chris with Marksman Shooting Sports in Westfield, Indiana, and you are watching Marksman TV. Welcome to this week's gun store vlog. Now, the question of the week is going to revolve around owning a gun store or working in a gun store and refraining from taking everything home that comes through the doors. I get that question all the time. People say, hey, you must get all this cool stuff in. How do you keep yourself from taking everything you get in home? And there's actually, it's a pretty, I think could be an interesting point of topic for discussion, so we're going to go into that. Now keep in mind, we do start with a little bit of inventory stuff, so if you're not interested in any of that, go down to the comment section, click on that timestamp that I will have pinned to the top of the comment section. You'll bypass all the inventory stuff and take you right into the question of the week. Anyway, if that all sounds interesting to you, stick around, that's coming up right now. Okay, right off the bat, I did want to say that we are not turning into a vlog channel. The reviews will keep coming. After doing this channel for 2 years, a lot of this stuff that I carry on a day-to-day basis in my store, I've already used in videos. And of course, we're a couple months past SHOT Show, so a lot of the newer stuff is already, I've already touched on. I do have some stuff coming in I'm going to be doing reviews on, but for the most part, some of that stuff's going to slow down over the next couple weeks until I come up with some new ideas and new review material and that sort of stuff. Now, some of the interesting stuff that I did get in is, I have always thought that these were really, really cool. This is a Taurus or Rossi Circuit Judge. So it is basically the Taurus Judge 410 45 long Colt revolver that's been converted sort of into a carbine fashion. Now at first when they released these, they had some issues because people would put their obviously you have expanding gases coming out the sides of where the forcing cone is out of the front of the cylinder, and when you have your hand up here, a lot of people would be too far back and those gases would get people in the hand and the wrist. They've added these little shields here to prevent that sort of thing from happening. So these are, it's very, very interesting. They're actually very comfortable and very lightweight. Surprisingly, when you look at it and then pick it up, it's a lot lighter than what you would expect, but just something different and interesting I wanted to show you guys. Another interesting one is a Columbian Mauser that has been sporterized and they put a Lyman sight on it. One of the interesting things about sort of showing you this is around, I want to say 50s and 60s and even into the 70s, this sort of thing was very common. So this is a military rifle that originally had a full-length stock that somebody got a hold of, and they cut the stock down, they took off the handguard, they rear sight, they added this Lyman sight, kind of lightened down the weight. This did not used to have a sight hood, but a lot of times when they had sight hoods, they would take those off too. And turned it into, basically, it's a 30-06 deer rifle now, which started on the Mauser Action, and this, like I said, was a Columbian Mauser. Now, keep in mind, back in the 50s and 60s, these sorts of things were a dime a dozen. You could go down to your hardware store and pick one of these up for maybe $5 to $10. As cheap as that. I mean, maybe through the 60s or 70s, they were up to $30, $40, $50. But anyway, they were cheap. You could do with them and do whatever you wanted with it, and could get a really inexpensive, nice deer rifle. This one actually looks like it's been bedded too. But today, a lot of collectors look at these things with a lot of remorse, or a lot of basically look at them and they're pretty upset because you took away the original military collectability and turned it into a hunting rifle. Of course, when people did this back in the 50s or whatever, they didn't really have that in mind. There's no way that they thought that, oh, a $40 Columbian Mauser is ever going to be worth anything, but nowadays they are. And you see this with K98 Mausers and 1903 Springfields and Enfields and all sorts of stuff. So it's just kind of a weird, interesting phenomenon from the past. So just kind of interesting. Now keep in mind, if you have a sporterized, old war gun, the value is going to be significantly less than if it were in its original configuration, obviously, because a lot of the collectability has been gone. Now, it is an interesting thing if you are on a budget and you're looking for a Mauser or a Springfield, you could find one that's sporterized. It hasn't been modified too badly. And then over the years, you can try and collect original parts and restore it back together. So keep in mind also, if you're looking at buying original completed guns, a lot of people have taken old sporterized rifles and built them back together with mismatched parts and stuff like that. So you have to be cognizant of that too. If somebody's trying to sell you an authentic original firearm, it could have been a previous sporter that they converted back and they're trying to make money on. So just a lot of interesting detail around these sporterized old battle rifles. This is another interesting one. This is a used SIG Rattler. Now this is not that uncommon. They still make these, but it's just interesting, the new stuff that's coming out in the AR pistol sort of configuration. It's just a SIG MCX with a brace, and everything on the front end has just been shortened. It's just a very interesting sort of PDW concept. Very lightweight, very ergonomic, very interesting. I might try and do a more of a feature review on one of these coming up soon, maybe. All right, guys, let's go ahead and get into the question of the week. And this is one I get pretty often. And that revolves around working in a gun store or owning a gun store. How do you keep yourself from buying all the cool used inventory that comes into the store? Now, like I said, it's no secret that when people bring in used inventory to sell to you, they expect that they are going to have to sell it to you at a price where you have room in it to make money. Therefore, you're getting a lot of opportunities to buy in unique and interesting and even rare things at seemingly much below the market value. So it's nice if you're somebody like me who's into World War II collectibles or something like that. It's nice to be able to see World War II collectibles come in frequently at prices that I could buy it at if I wanted to at well below the market value. Now in my instance, and this is probably true with a lot of other gun stores, and also as always feel free to weigh in the comment section if you work at or own a gun store, how you sort of approach this. But for the amount of firearms that have come into my store, especially at the prices that I've obtained them at, I have not bought too many or taken too many home. Now there have been instances where I've taken home like, a couple Mosin Nagants or an Enfield or a Springfield rifle or that, kind of the lesser value sort of things. But I have had really high-end, valuable, rare things like a Johnson rifle, Lugers, things like that that I would love to put in my personal collection. And I could have taken them home at a really, really less, than, a really affordable or attractive price, but refrained from doing that. And there's lots of reasons to why. First of all, when you open and operate a gun store, that is really what you are doing. You are in the business of buying and selling guns to make money. And as many of you can imagine, and we've talked about in other gun store vlogs, there is not a whole lot of money in this business. I mean, you can make a very comfortable living. I'm not going to lie about that. But it would be difficult to then get in, most of the cool stuff you get in where you can make a lot of money, you're then taking home. That means that the business then does not have the opportunity to make money or a profit on that inventory. So once you open a business, and again, this is sort of through the perspective of a gun store owner, that's the purpose of these vlogs. Once you go through the process of opening a gun store and putting in all that money that you are trying to recoup and gain back and make a profit and a living, you learn very quickly that your options are very limited in terms of the things that you can take home and put in your own personal collection. Now keep in mind, I am coming from the perspective of somebody who has been here for only 5 years. I'm still a relatively new company. So as maybe 20 years from now, if I'm still here, knock on wood, hopefully, the business will be large and successful to the point where it's like if I took home a nice valuable gun from time to time, it wouldn't really have any effect on the bottom line. But as of right now, I really need to move on and sell the things I get. I can't afford to just take everything home. Now, like I said, there are a couple things I will take home, things that, well, if I had sold it in the store, maybe I would have made 50 bucks here or 100 bucks there. But those are far and few between. And if I added up all that, that sort of lost revenue together, it would equal probably well under $1,000, in the 5 years I've been here. There's other certain legal things around that question too, and I'm going to preface this next section by saying that I am not an attorney or a tax accountant, and I'm not giving any type of legal advice. I would just be speaking from my experience and also through the advice that my accountants have given to me in regards to this. But keep in mind, when you open a business, a gun store, the business is an entity and you are an entity. And as far as the ATF is concerned as well, if you were to purchase something from your gun store, you are considered a private person, no different than a customer who walks in the front door. So for example, if you want to buy a gun out of your own inventory, you have to do a background check and all of that. And tax-wise, you still have to pay sales tax on that. So what you would want to do is actually create a transaction, just as you would with any other customer that comes through the front door, and sell it to yourself, collect sales tax on that sale and everything. So when you buy inventory from wholesalers, they actually make you send in a state tax exemption form so that they basically, anytime product is sold between two parties, you obviously have to collect sales tax as long as the party that's buying it is the end user. Now, as a wholesaler to a retailer, obviously the retailer is not the end user. They're going on and selling it to the end user, at which point sales taxes, your state sales tax, are collected. They have to have that exemption form that has your EIN number, your merchant ID number, and all that sort of stuff on it to basically say that, okay, this transaction is tax exempt because sales tax will be collected at the next point of transaction. If I were to, say, purchase a new Wasser 10 from a distributor, that would come to my store tax exempt. Then if I want to sell that Wasser 10 to myself, I would have to collect sales tax on that. That kind of goes along with usage tax. So, for example, if a convenience store owner who can buy paper towels and toilet paper and maybe canned food at a wholesale without paying sales tax on it, if they then go and say, oh, you know, I'm going to take home a packet of toilet paper and a couple cans of beans or whatever just out of my inventory and take it home, no big deal. They would actually have to pay tax on that item since they are taking it out of their inventory and acting as the end user. That's called usage tax. Now let's talk about new firearms. So a lot of people think, a lot of the incentive is to get an FFL because how cool would it be to be able to buy all of your firearms that you're interested in, whether it's a new Glock or an AR-15, at a wholesale price and not have to pay, go into another gun store and pay a retail value. Now keep in mind, like I said, through all your distributors, you are submitting a tax exemption form. So that as you're purchasing it, it is assumed that the end sale of that item will be taxed. So as long as, and again, you can try and fly under the radar as much as you want on this, but when that firearm comes in and you sell it to yourself out of your inventory, you do have to do a background check on yourself. That's required per the ATF because in order to get an item out of your logbook, it has to be done either through a background check, somebody else's FFL, or a lost or stolen firearm report or form, which I've never had to fill out, fortunately. Now there have been cases where, of course, if I've wanted a new SIG 365 or a Glock or anything like that in the past, of course, what I'm going to do if I want it is go to my wholesaler, buy the gun that I want when it comes in. I'll give it a little bit of a markup to at least cover my credit card fees if I'm going to pay my business with a credit card or pay with cash, just to cover, because I look at my business as a separate entity. It's not my own account, it's its own thing that I happen to work for. So it's kind of the way you take it. And again, I'm speaking within the rigid lines of how I perceive the tax laws and everything. Of course, people are going to fudge and blur the lines a little bit on how they conduct their business, which is why it's always good to get healthy conversation down in the comment section from people who might own businesses, even in a different industry. But anyway, I digress. Getting back to a new gun, sure, if you have your FFL, you want a Glock 19 Gen 5, let's say, and you want to sell it to yourself at wholesale, as long as you are selling it to yourself and collecting the sales tax on that because you are now the end user, even if you sell it to yourself at cost, it's not going to raise any red flags or any issues like that. There's only with that trip sort of a point of interest is that there is a massively different distinction in the value to the point where you're making thousands or tens of thousands of dollars on the fact that you got that gun at a really low price. So like anybody else, if I want to buy a firearm, I don't just pay for it with the business's money. Some people might have this impression it's like your business pays for the gun. Say it's a Mosin Nagant, somebody comes in, the business says, okay, sir, I'll give you $100 for this gun. Okay, they say, sure, the business pays them for the firearm. You don't then just take it home because the business has paid for it. In terms of accounting, that money has gone somewhere, it's gone into inventory. Well, where's that inventory? If you take it at home and put it in your own personal collection, again, some people are not as anal about following these sorts of strict requirements, but I definitely do. In terms of where our inventory is, where the money from the business is going, and I keep that very separate from my own personal finances from my business finances. And then, just like anybody else, I am a person who makes an income and I can't just anytime, is it for you, even if it's a good price, can you just go into a gun store every single day and walk out of there with 3 or 4 guns? I can't either. So, I personally can't afford to buy all this stuff. Even if we're not considering the loss that the business will not be able to resell that inventory, but I personally have so much money that I can spend on guns that come in the door anyway. Even if I wanted all of them, I could never afford them. And the last thing I will touch on is sort of the public outlook on your business as well. So it's good to, if you get a bunch of odd and unusual things, it usually creates a lot of buzz and attention when you post those things for sale because it shows people that you're getting in weird and unusual and different things. You don't just carry the run-of-the-mill Glocks and AR-15s and stuff just like everybody else. So it gives people a reason to keep an eye on your business, to come in frequently and see what you're getting. If every time you got in something unique, cool, and interesting, you just took it home and it never went to your sales floor, it would kind of start giving people less incentive to come on in and, you know, look at your store and look at the inventory and stuff you're getting in. But anyway, guys, I will leave you with that. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing to the channel and hitting that bell notification button so you know when I am posting new content. If you like this video, please hit that like button. And if you have any questions, or maybe you have any sort of insight or outlook on this topic, go ahead and leave that down in the comment section. I would love to hear your guys' opinion on that. Anyway, guys, I will leave you with that. I am Chris with Marksman Shooting Sports in Westfield, Indiana. You are watching Marksman TV, and I will see you next time.